T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight is, frankly, an episode that I've wanted to do since I started this podcast, and honestly, even before. I have the honor of being joined by Mr. Craig Trumbower tonight. He's a legend in herpetoculture, known for lots of different things, but he is also the author of the upcoming book, The Complete Guide to Pine Snakes, Bull Snakes, and Gopher Snakes, an introduction to the genus Pituophis. As you guys know, Pituophis are some of the snakes that I'm the most passionate about. And then especially over the last few years, I've really become more invested in as far as my collection goes. And I'm very excited to get to talk to Craig about all aspects of the book and also just the Pituophis genus tonight, amongst many other topics that I will not preface all of you with right now, just because I want to get into this conversation. But before we do that, of course, as always, USARC. So USARC is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle. Check out usarc.org for everything you need to know about the organization. That website is also where you can find alerts on any new pieces of legislation introduced either at the national level or local levels, as well as updates on progress of any pieces of legislation. usarc.org is also where you can become a member of the organization. As a community, we have strength in numbers, and the more people that are behind the cause, the better. And here we are. Thank you to everybody who is tuned in live. The live chats are already going. For anybody who has any questions throughout the podcast for Craig, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll make sure to try to get to as many of them as I can. But if you are here on YouTube live or after the fact, thank you very much for being here. Please subscribe here on YouTube to the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A new podcast drops every single day of the week from some of the best hosts in the entire game, talking about a wide variety of topics from within the reptile industry. So if you are a reptile podcast fan, you have come to the right place. We are also on all the audio platforms as well, if that is more your speed. That is personally my speed. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you can get your podcast from. You can find the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A follow and a 5-star review on any of those platforms would be most appreciated. And with that housekeeping out of the way, let's bring Craig onto the show. Good evening, Craig. Thank you for being here with me tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Happy holidays, everybody.
I like your festive background. Definitely is fitting for the time of year.
Actually, that's the normal placement of the tree. It just so happens it frames this bald head very well. So.
Absolutely. So for the people out there who may not be too familiar with you, I've heard your backstory on a couple podcasts, and frankly, I find it fascinating. Kind of give us the origin story. How did you, as a kid, become familiarized with reptiles, and kind of what has the journey been up to where we are?
Yeah, that's a question I ask a lot of people. I think it's a very important question. How did you get started? And I was a school teacher briefly, amongst some other careers. But actually, I was a kid on Little Rock Air Force Base. My dad was a very famous World War II P-51 pilot, and he was killed when I was 11. We were living on the Air Force Base, and he didn't like snakes. I was down at the creek with my BB gun, little Daisy BB gun, saw a ribbon snake, and I shot it and killed it, and was in school on the base and bragging about killing the snake. And my teacher overheard that, and just a wonderful thing. She asked me why I killed it, and I said, well, it was a snake. And she said, well, you were going to do a book report on snakes. And sent me to the library for the rest of the day, and I pulled out very, very little literature back then. Ditmars and Pope and Carl Schmidt had a little handbook, and I actually collect those handbooks. Crick and all these guys, whenever they get them, I buy them and give them away to people that come here and friends. But it had little colored plates in it. And I was just mesmerized by the color and fascinated with that book. And the next week I was down at the creek, instead of shooting it, I found another ribbon saying I caught it, brought it home. And luckily I had a wonderful mother. She said, well, your dad's not going to like this, so we're going to have to hide it. And I kept it in an empty tackle box. And that's kind of how it started.
Okay.
Just briefly, my dad was killed in a boating accident. I was with him. It was I talk about it freely, but I was a child. I jumped off the boat, and as he was reaching for me, going under. So, back then there wasn't any kid therapy. And,
imagine.
It was a tough thing. It affected a good part of my first part of my life. I was always angry, always in fights and things.
Sure.
And, it took a long time to figure all that out. But after his death, I went to live on my grandfather's farm in Missouri, and the snake thing had already bitten me, so to speak. And I got there. My grandfather gave me a .22, and I was still angry. I went out and started shooting things, and my grandmother asked me why I was killing all this stuff, and started to cry. And she said, you know what? We have a lot of snakes on the property. Why don't you go out and see if you can catch a few? And boy, did I. Back then, you sent snakes by Railway Express. And Railway Express, they would send anything. And my grandfather built this 6-foot wooden screened-in box and put all the snakes in there together. A speckled king and a missing little black rat snake. Everything was in there together. And it arrived in Fort Lauderdale at my mother's house, unbeknownst to her. And that started my collection. So it's always a great story. And teachers are underappreciated. And I'll put a little plug in. I'm a registered nurse. And recently we've been called non-professionals. And I would challenge that. But teachers are so important. And in herpetoculture, we are actually teachers.
Sure.
So for all of you out there who have an opportunity to speak at a school or to give a talk, I would encourage you to do that. It's you never know where you plant the seed to somebody. And I'll end this. Let me just say this one thing, because it's an important point. When we're at expos and shows and things, I always walk around and look at everybody, and I see a lot of people sitting, and they don't look too enthused. And I think if you stand up and you greet people, and those kids that come by, talk to them. If they can't afford a snake, give them a snake. If that makes you go bankrupt in your snake business, you have no business being in there. So give that kid a snake. So to that point, Lynn and I were in Daytona about 4 or 5 years ago, and we saw this guy walk in the back of the building, and he looked like he was about 7 feet tall. He was 6'10", but when you see a tall guy, everybody takes notice.
Sure.
And he walks in, and he comes walking, and I said, "God, he's coming over right by us," and he walked right up to my table, and I was shocked. I looked up at him, and he said, "Yeah, I know I'm tall." He said, I was in Orlando. You won't remember me, Mr. Trumbower, but I was a kid here with my mom, and I wanted a pair of Okatee corn snakes, and she couldn't afford them, and you gave me that pair. And I just wanted to let you know, I saw the show was this weekend. I drove over to tell you this, that I just got my PhD in herpetology, and I got a professorship, and I'm teaching, and I wanted to thank you.
Wow.
Brought me to tears. So,
Sure.
So you never know how you influence people. And when you're really passionate about what we're passionate about, I encourage people to share that passion. That's where the joy comes. It's not just the slit in the egg and the nose coming through. if you don't have anyone to share that with, it's just a nose coming through an egg. So, so I'm on that big rant here lately as I get older for people to share their passion and do some nice things for kids.
Yeah, no question. The human connection at the end of the day really is what this world of herpetoculture is all about. I think for anybody who has had periods of time where maybe they've been isolated or disconnected from their friends they've made in herpetoculture, at least to me, it dampens the happiness that I derive from the animals when I don't have anybody to share it with. And that's, one of the main reasons, or, I guess two of your points, the reasons why I love doing these podcasts. One is just to be able to connect with so many people that have different experiences. And, obviously if this was in person, it would be a whole heck of a lot better, but, you're in Florida, correct?
Correct. I'm in Tallahassee. I grew up in South Florida, but I've lived here twice, and we're very at home up here.
Okay. So, yeah. I mean, so you being in Florida and me in West Texas doing this in person might not be the easiest, but, just if one or two people, and, lots of people will really enjoy this episode, but if somebody is truly inspired by something they hear tonight, I think that that's worth everything. Do it that we do.
Yeah. And I think, Steve, that, we lived in Marathon in West Texas for 10 years. So I just visited for the first time this year. Bought an old Adobe and rebuilt it. And it was my dream after going out there so much, and spent 10 years and didn't have grandkids when we arrived. And we had about 13 10 years later. And it was kind of time to come home and get the kids cranked up, with the snake thing. So I've had my cake and eat it too. Yeah. It's such an incredible part of the country out there in that part of Texas. It really, it's unlike anything else out here, in El Paso, out this far, it's very Arizona-like. Out, New Mexico is incredible, but just the amount of different types of habitat you can experience in such a close proximity out in, that Marathon area is just, it's ridiculous. It's beautiful. It's truly a wonderful place. And I had the opportunity to spend a decade exploring areas. When I first went out there in the very early 70s, it was really raw. There were very, very few snake people. And, I studied Blair's king snakes and the story of the original holotype, and which actually the holotype was off of Boy Scout Road. Okay. And also the holotype for Subocularis, Transpicus rat snake, was off of Boy Scout Road back in the back in Goat Cave Canyon in the very back. Meyenberg and Brown. There's an excellent paper that was written by, let's see, Jerry Salmon. I get this wrong because I think I say Bob Hansen, and it wasn't Bob, it was Jerry Salmon. And well, I'll think of it anyway. It'll come to me in the middle of this conversation, but sure, I'll let you know. So I kind of want to go back a little bit to, you're a child, you've discovered your love of reptiles. At this point, what type of semblance of herpetoculture even exists in the United States? What point do you discover that other people share the same passion that you do? Well, there just wasn't. There just wasn't. You were a snake guy alone, and usually there just wasn't publications. There was no internet. There's none of that, and pet stores had a place back in the day. Okay. So you'd be in a pet store buying mice or doing something, and occasionally they would have a snake, and I heard of a guy in Fort Lauderdale that was kind of into snakes, and became my best friend, and kind of started there. And golly, there was a handful of us in the East Coast, and then there were the West Coast guys, and I really got ramped up when a previous relationship. My wife was an airline stewardess, and she flew national airlines. There was a on the tail of every one of those planes was a stewardess walking, like she was running and hair blowing, and that was my wife. And the logo was "Come Fly Me," National Airlines. Well, I think some pilots were flying, or the relationship didn't work out. So, but sorry about that. But I had an opportunity to fly free, so because she was a stewardess, and I took advantage of that, and I went out and met people on the West Coast: Marty Tomerlin, Jim Brockett, Western Zoo, and in fact, I would talk about snakes on a plane back in the day. And of course, there was no legislation or rules, and Burmese pythons were extremely rare. And I had a pair of 6-footers, and Samson and I used to make a hard suitcase. And I had a male on the left one, and a female on the right one, and a little top, and went on the plane, and no problem. And took them to Monrovia, and then I would trade for West Coast crotalids.
Okay.
Rattlesnakes, had a rattlesnake collection, and I would come back, and I wouldn't suggest this today. And of course, back in those days, we made a lot of mistakes, and I certainly wouldn't do that. But yeah, that's how I met people. And it was late night conversations when Ma Bell, it was a cheap rate, and you would talk on the phone, for hours. Lloyd Lemke and a lot of other people, and there just wasn't a whole bunch. There were zoo people, and zoos were very reluctant at the time to really share information.
Okay.
They were great teachers, but they weren't really too enthused about private keepers. There were some, Lawrence Klauber, of course, and Carl Caulfield, and they were all associated with zoos. Although Klauber, did something completely different. He was a very successful businessman.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a small group of people, and in some ways, it really was so exciting. We didn't know what we were doing, and as far as breeding snakes, wow, that was there's very little information. A few zoos were breeding snakes. San Diego, pretty famous for some of the first breedings, and Philadelphia, Chicago. Of course, New York, and but the very beginning, we didn't have any. We didn't have hide boxes and cages, and there was nothing. You just try to figure it out. Substrata, and when we did get eggs, it was like, wow, what do we do? How do we hatch these? There was no temperature parameters, and we learned the hard way. You need a little bit of moisture and a little bit of heat. And but it was a very exciting time. I really appreciate the life I've lived, and having to carve out things yourself and learn things. And I think that's really how a lot of us really got to where we are today. We just we had to create things ourselves. So
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny. I have an interesting connection to like the extreme early days of herpetoculture. My grandma on my mom's side actually used to keep snakes with her mom in New York City, and probably had to be the 30s.
Wow.
And my mom never knew that until I got my first snake, and my grandparents were visiting, and she kind of like warned them ahead. So I'm like, there's a snake here. I'm not sure if you guys will be okay with this. And her mom's like, oh, I used to love snakes. I kept them as a kid. And my mom's like, I'm however old, and I'm just finding out about this now. So, I kind
of see, it's genetic.
It is.
Call Harry Green up and say, we have a link to this genetic snake thing.
Yes, exactly. And my mom was het for snake lover. She will not touch them, but my dad must have been carrying the other het. So I just, I'm not sure I've even told that story on here before, but it's, I can only imagine back then, just, the amount of trial and error, like you were saying, that they had to go through to even figure out what the heck they were going to do with these snakes. Must have been.
It's laughable because they're just, there are very few books, and nothing really on keeping. Carl Caulfield really opened everything up with his iconic books, and got things started. But you just didn't know. My first cages, my mother was great. She really encouraged my hobby, which was kind of unusual back then. We would drive around the neighborhood, and back then you had big TV sets, and the picture tube would go out, and you pull the picture tube out, and you had this nice cabinet with a glass front, and you could build it back, and it had legs on it, and made a great snake cage. So I always tell people, we were driving around neighborhoods looking for old TV sets out by the corner, and I had a bedroom full of TV sets, and I think Motorola's were the best, or something. I don't know, but you just, how do you cage things? I mean, the natural inclination were the old Metaframe, slate bottomed aquariums made for fish. And then, what did you do for substrata, and we started very primitively. You learn very quickly with the health of snakes, what they require. But it really made you concentrate and learn a lot about snakes. We really watched snakes to see what they wanted. That's a thing today that with slide boxes, and I have some, and I'm not really criticizing, but when you can visualize snakes like behind you, you learn so much. The snakes will tell you what they want if you pay attention to them. If you're around them long enough, they'll tell you exactly what they want. And that's kind of, how it was back then. We had to learn that ourselves. And some things were extremely laughable. My first incubation, I incubated, I think my first clutches were, and actually very rare back then. I think maybe one of the first, I caught a gravid suboc and hatched those eggs. But I had a 7-foot gray rat snake. I was in Gainesville trying to get in graduate school, and doing too many mushrooms and having too much fun. And, a couple of years, I decided I have to get a degree in JOB. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of Gainesville. But I'd caught a 7-foot gravid female gray rat snake and laid 32 eggs.
Wow.
And Thatcher, is a guy, had a pet store anyway, love for sale. He calls me 32 Egg Craig to this day. So I hatched those, and I didn't know what to use. So I made kind of a mulch out of newspaper, wet newspaper. Okay. I just gummy mulch, and I just packed them in that, put them in an aquarium, and they all hatched. So that was the start of many substratas, And to that point, I think in herpetoculture, and I write about this in the book, in the second part of the book, Pitiophis book, that I think sometimes we make it a little too complicated.
Sure.
The right amount of warmth and heat and some moisture. So there's a lot of different ways to hatch eggs, but we've gotten pretty sophisticated, and we do it. I mean, I had some of the first chondro pythons, and Trooper Walsh, of course, was ahead of me. He was one of the first guys, and boy, talk about trying to hatch those things, and that took a while. But
sure.
I'm very happy that I lived when I've lived and had to learn the way we learned.
Sure.
And today, you can just, it's all there for you. You just pick it up, and there's real smart young kids coming up that, it's embarrassing. Could ask some pretty good questions, but So it's been a good ride. And so many of the original guys are getting old now. We've lost some, and it's just, it's part of life.
Sure.
But when you get a chance to listen to some of those stories, they're really, really good ones.
I love it when I get those opportunities just to sit back and listen to old stories of herpetoculture. It's just, I was never, becoming a little older, a little more interested in history. As a kid, I just couldn't, history in school just could not have interested me less. But any sort of history on herpetoculture, I'm glued to whatever that source is for as long as I'm hearing it.
Tom Huff coined that word, herpetoculture, too.
Okay.
Late Tom Huff, and I remember when I first heard it, made perfect sense. And I write a little bit about that in the book too. You know, we confuse herpetology with herpetoculture, two different things.
Sure.
And but they go hand in hand. And
No doubt.
I'm starting to see some professional herpetologists recognize some herpetocultural some people in the industry that are doing good things, and I'd like to see us be able to work a little bit more together.
Sure.
You know, with some things, I think that's would be one of my goals in IHS, to see that happen, and also to bring in younger people.
Yeah.
If you look at IHS now, it's a bunch of us guys retelling the same old stories. You know, we need some of you younger guys in there, and you know, it's an important organization. So,
no doubt. Yeah, I've never been to an IHS, but this year we were talking earlier. I think
50th anniversary should go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'll put a little plug in. I do a little wood carving and woodworking, and I make a box for Terry Vandevenner, who's just one of the top knife makers in the world. He makes a knife, I make a box, and we donate those, and we're going to do a real special one for IHS.
Okay.
50th anniversary. So, but it should be quite an event. I think it's in July. Yeah.
Yep. No, never. You know, I'd take any excuse you can to get out to the Chiricahua Desert Museum as well. It's a phenomenal place out there.
Yeah.
It's a little off the beaten path, but if you can get there, it's amazing.
Well, you know, I'll give a little shout out to Bob Ashley. He's not only my publisher, but he's golly, he's like a you know, like a second son. I think a lot of me has a remarkable story that I'll spare you some of the details, but you know, started with a box of snake T-shirts and $0, which is a true story. And sold them, and then bought 2 boxes for the next show, and went to the next show. And that's how he started.
Wow.
And Bob's responsible for the herpetological library out there, which is quite a place. And of course, the museum. And actually, the reason he built that museum was that he wanted a place for his venomous crotid collection. And it kind of, you know, it went off course in a lot of different good directions. So Bob does a lot for us and herpetology. Absolutely. And yeah, I can't say enough nice things about him. Besides, he publishes my books, you know. Listen, you know, and speaking of the books, I mean, it's a very hard thing today. It's a dying thing. People don't buy books. They pick up handheld devices and read things. And I get that.
Yeah.
I'm old, and I like to turn pages and smudge ink on my fingers, and the smell of a book. And, you know, I love that. But for someone to publish a book today, you know, it's a book, say on herpetology or herpetoculture, and then a specific genus. Wow. You know, for someone to lay out the money, and it's a sizable investment to publish a book. And you know, you hope that your publisher gets his money back. Sure. And, you know, and Bob and Russ Gurley too, and my old buddy Louis Porras, they've all published books knowing that they probably wouldn't make their money back, but it was important to do so. So whenever you get a chance, you thank those guys and support them by buying a book. But Bob's done a lot for published works in herpetoculture. Yeah,
I feel like Bob is one of those guys who, especially these days, particularly with younger people or people who are newer to the industry, you know, it's a name that most reptile keepers probably don't know. And he is somebody who is, you know, as far as influential people in the industry, I mean, right up there at the absolute top of all the different aspects of what we do that he has his influence in. And that, you know, if it wasn't for him, we would be still a good bit back of where we are now.
Yeah. He has a motor that just doesn't quit. He and I don't sleep at night. We're constantly we're coming up with something, thinking about something. We have a lot of late night conversations. But yeah, the man's done some remarkable things, and we should all be thankful. So IHS is out there, of course, this year, and they'll put on quite a little shindig there. I think I'm on a panel there on the history of herpetoculture. I think Bob Applegate's on the panel and a few other guys. And not because we're the smart guys, it's because we're the old guys. It's what you do now. You have the old guy on and you say nice things, and these words as icon and all these things are much appreciated, but I take them all with a grain of salt, and.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's how you're talking to somebody who you should be, because anybody who has too much of an inflated sense of self with anything is probably not the right person to talk to, in my opinion.
Well, we have a few of those in the industry.
That's a handful.
We have a few of those. And, and to that point too, we need to do a better job about getting along.
For sure.
Social media has raised its ugly head in that herpetoculturist. It's shit that I don't want to see. And I see too much of it. I talk quite a bit about, the people that you have morph people, and you have locality specific people, and locality specific people say, "Oh, it's just a ball python show, and who cares about the morphs?" And they elevate themselves to some elite level because they're a locality person. Yeah. So my question to all of you out there is that I challenge that. Are we really locality specific? I have locality specific animals, but I bred Okatee corn snakes back from when I caught them back in the early 70s. And like other Okatee corn snake breeders, we line breed them. And after 30 years, we have a snake that you would never find in Okatee today. Is that bad? No, it's not bad. But when I talk to locality breeders, in reality, when you hatch things out or you have live young, you go, gosh, I'm keeping that one back. And it's the 10. It's the 10. But in reality, if you want to preserve the true locality look, you should be keeping 5s back, the average snake, and breeding those. And I don't know. I've asked that question 100 times in the last couple of years, and people are pretty honest. I can't keep a 5. I can't. I see the 10. I want to keep the 10, right? So we breed the 10s. So are we really locality breeders?
Right.
A lot of us aren't. So kind of get over yourselves. And then for the morph people too, we're not, I tell people, we're not creating these genes, we're fast forwarding them. Gregor Mendel would just love this today. He went from pea pods to, ball pythons alone. And I look at all that stuff. If Bern Bechtel was here, he'd walk around with me and we'd go, how do you get shark repellent orange, in a ball python? How do you get some of these colors, the chromatophores? It's very interesting, and it's a genetic thing. You're just fast forwarding genes. Sure. It can happen in the wild. Of course, a lot of this, it's 1 in a million or a billion. But so to the point, I think everybody needs to take a deep breath. Give the ball python people a break. They're not doing anything wrong, and locality specific people, you aren't either. But this adverse stuff that we're listening to and everything, I don't want to hear it. And I'm one of the old guys. I'm saying, come on, let's get along and be nice to one another. It's a big thing today, human kindness, and we don't have enough of it. And we can use it in our industry.
Yes, 100%. And, one thing that I think everyone realizes, whether consciously or subconsciously, who may have some of that kind of superiority complex about them, the keepers who are buying your locality specific obscure species, how do you think they probably got started, especially if they are younger? More than likely, they saw ball pythons, got interested in ball pythons, and then their interest started to veer other directions.
Oh, sure.
A lot of these people have the ball python people to thank for their customer base to begin with, and the industry in general.
Well, my book is dedicated to Tom Moisey, who was the Pituophis guy back in the day. Tom's older than I am, which is pretty old. I think Tom's 81, and he actually collected himself or put together almost every species, subspecies of Pituophis except one.
Wow.
And brought the first Gibson eye into the country, which is kind of an interesting story. And firstly, Naticolus, which I was privy to have some of the first ones that came in through Tom. But to the point of ball pythons, Tom was keeping, back then we called them royal pythons, and they were coming in 5 and 6 footers. People don't believe that, but these were huge snakes.
Yeah.
You don't see that too much in the industry, but Tom was the first one, I think, of anybody I know that bred ball pythons.
Okay.
Yeah. Back before the albino, back before any of that stuff, which was, it seems simple today, but it wasn't so simple.
Sure.
The Burmese pythons, Harvey Fisher, the LA Zoo, I used to collect with him and back in the early 70s, and he had this big berm, and they just couldn't hatch the eggs, and then they'd set them up and things didn't go right. And this Burmese laid eggs it was in a big corner display cage at the LA Zoo, and they had a big pool, and you always see a big retic or an anaconda or something in one of those things. And it was a Burmese python. She laid eggs in the pool of water. And,
Lovely.
I remember saying, don't throw them out. And, he was sure, they're all bad. They were kind of tumbled up in her and all wet and everything. And they all hatched. That was the first time. And that just showed that they really, there wasn't enough moisture in their incubation techniques and stuff. So it sounds silly today, but, we just didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to imagine some of your fondest memories come back from those times when, you didn't know, but then you figure out one step towards, figuring it out. I'd have to imagine that some of those times are just the most memorable.
Oh, so exciting. Here's a little venomous story for you about that.
Let's do it.
So I was keeping Vitus, Nasocornus, and gaboons and puffs and, different localities. There were true localities, back then. And a lot of rhinos and puffs and things came in through the industry, especially in South Florida, to the old animal houses that Chase and some of these places. You actually go down there and they had big warehouse. They had elephants and rhinos and hippos and snakes, and it's crazy time. And, you can argue a lot of that today, and certainly it has been argued, and it's better. But to the point, these rhinos would come in, and they'd drop babies pretty frequently. And, I'd buy babies, and a few of the other people that were into those, we would buy them, and they would all die. And we knew that they came in heavily parasitized. And kind of short-lived snakes. Rhinos rarely live more than 7 or 8. At least that's my impression. And so they were all dying. There's a big water bowl in the cage, and then I had some plants in there, some tropical ferns, and I used an atomizer and I sprayed down the cage, and all of a sudden, every baby rhino in there started drinking off its back and out of its spoils. Well, we know that today. We didn't know that then. So we had a big bowl of water in there. None of them were going to the water to drink, and they were dying because they were dehydrated. And you just started spraying them, and they're drinking off their back, which a lot of snake scales are designed for that, and forest floor animals do that too. So that was very exciting to learn that, and of course, never lost one after that. So, but who would know?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of get into the Pituophis topic a little bit, and you can talk about the book as well. What kind of started your interest in the genus, and when did it really become something you were fixated on?
Well, golly. It started with another mom story. Took me down to Ralph Curtis's place, another animal dealer. And we walked in, and somebody had just pulled, one of the workers there pulled out a big 7-foot yellow rat snake, and I grabbed it and it bit me in the face, big bloody mess. But just an obscure little snake bite, but it looks worse than it is. My mother just, she was a nurse, and she said, "Oh gosh, we're not getting that snake." And he had a Great Basin gopher snake, Deserticola, and I wanted that so bad. And so it was $7. It was a lot of money back then, and we were poor. And my mom, I said I would mow the yard and wash the car and do all these things for years, and wrote all this contract down. She put it in the Bible. And back then, when you signed a contract with your parents and you put it in a Bible, you had to go do it. You just had to. So the hissing, all of those things came out of that snake, brand new discovery. And then, of course, when I was young, I was catching pine snakes in Florida, actually in areas that they're no longer there, South Florida, in fact. And it just kind of was an interest, a big hardy snake. And then the big thing for me is Louis, Dave Heckert, I think, was curator at the Abilene Zoo, and they had a wild albino, and they bred it to a wild normal phenotype. And he had hets. And Louis got me a pair of hets out of the zoo. And of course, for private people to get anything out of zoos, and of course they signed that agreement where nobody would do that, except when the zoo wanted something out of your collection. Then they were willing to trade. We found that out down the road. So anyway, I had the first albino. I produced the first albino bull snake. The same year Mark Bell did too. He was working independently with another albino. And then I got together with Norm Dam, who had an anery from Colorado. And of course, back then you do the obligatory thing of creating a snow, which washes all the color out of a snake. And so, but we went through the whole process. And out of that, we produced the first, and we don't know where that gene came from. Well, we do now, but the first white-sided bull snakes, I didn't name those. That's a partial leucistic chromatophore defect, for anybody that wants to know what it really is. And then the hypo line that people call, I don't name my snakes Trumbower hypos or whatever. It's but thank you. It's very very nice. I see snakes all the time. People send me pictures with my name attached to some Pituophis, and I've never seen that snake before in my life. I have no idea what it is, but thanks for the name. I mean, I don't know. So that really kind of started us, and a lot of breeding. And then I really went on several collecting trips, bull snakes and gopher snakes, and had quite a collection. But as you know, keeping a large Pituophis collection is a lot of maintenance and a lot of work to keep a nice smelling room.
Sure.
So, yeah. So anyway, but so the interest is always been there. Bob asked me to write the Pituophis book, and I said, no, I'm not the guy. Number one, I'm not an academic, and number two, I just didn't think I was the guy. And for 2 years, I said no. And then, I started reading. There's so much controversy in taxonomy, of course, in everything in herpetology today, but in Pituophis, and some of the well-known academics, well-respected, can't even agree amongst themselves. So it left an opening for me. I said, well, if they can't agree, I've got my opinion, and of course, I'll put it out there. And I took a step back, and today some people think there's only 6 species in the genus. Some people say 10. I took a step back to the whole Catenifer chain, all 19 species, subspecies, the insular forms. A lot of them aren't recognized anymore. But if I did a book and you never heard of Fulginatus or some of these island forms, you would never know the history. So you're really not learning something about Pituophis. So I took a step back where we all could agree. And I explained that in this book. You have to read the preface and the taxonomy chapter, because it explains a lot. And why I put the book together the way it's put together. And I hope that it serves a purpose for everyone, for someone new coming in to the PhD that wants a good map of where something is. So had a lot of help. A lot of terrific people have jumped in to help me with this, and a 3-year project for me. And it's done. It's at the printers. We're waiting, daily for our actual print day. It's pretty exciting. You write a book, you get the date and the time they're going to run the print.
Okay.
And then they tell you when they stop, and they air the first book's over, and the publisher gets one, and the writer gets one. And very exciting time. So the slow boat from China, and literally with tariffs, it's a nightmare. You try to sell a book, and a specific book, and you want to make your money back, and you sell a book now for $50 because it takes that. By the time, and now with the tariff thing, I don't know. And by the way, some of the best print houses in the world are in China because of the cost of labor. They have great paper. They do a really, really good job. And we just don't have, we have university presses that do a good job, but it's a whole different kind of a thing. So, I applaud Bob for sticking his neck out and on this one. And I hope we can make his money back. So that's on me. If the book sucks, I'm 77, so I don't have to live with that too long. Don't ever write a book like this when you're 30, because you may have to spend your whole life having someone say, "Oh yeah, you're the guy who wrote that sucky book." So I hope it serves a purpose, and had a lot of participation and cooperation from a lot of people. So excited. It should be here early in January. And, it's going to be a hardback, a nice slipcover, and then he's doing a limited leather-bound edition it comes in a case. It's very, very nice package. And I'm going to schedule to be in Tinley in the spring show to do a book signing with the book. Okay. To try to get some stuff out there, but we'll see. Plenty of critics, and you write a book, and you need to be nice and listen to what people have to say. So, most people have really constructive, good criticism, and always open to that. And for the few that are a little obnoxious, I always say to them, and the title of your book is what?
Exactly.
It's a process to write a book. It's a very complicated process. You can get your own publisher and pay to have a book done. And of course, they'll tell you your book is great. They want your money, want to print your book. But to have a publisher put his own money out, $40,000, $50,000 to start with, and stuff, to do something on a very specific topic, is rather extraordinary today. Sure, it's really going away quickly. So, hang on to those books. Because they're far and few between now.
Yeah, absolutely. And this might be a little bit too broad of a question to ask, but when it comes to writing a book a reptile book, there's so many different aspects within, you're looking at a genus of snakes, so many different things that one may want to write about. How do you even approach outlining, figuring out what you want to say in how many words? Like, what's the process in your mind of kind of getting yourself in the mindset of, all right, this is what I want to write about? Yeah, that's a very, very good question, Stephen. You really have to be focused when you take on a project. What are your goals for this book? Mm-hmm. What is within your limits, to write, to put it out there. That's why I said I didn't really think I was the guy initially, and I got brave and had a few well-respected PhDs basically saying, you just basically own it, grow some balls, own what you write, and stand behind it,
and try to be accurate in what you do. And we've certainly tried to do that in this book. But, for me, my first two books were just stories. And actually, I wrote that first book. I wrote that for my family. And Bob was visiting with some visitors in West Texas, John Cann. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Just something for the family." And he read part of it and said, "Well, I want to publish it." And I was rather surprised. So, but stories, I'm a storyteller, So this book is different. This book's different. And I think it's informative. It can't be with 19 species, subspecies, and the second half of the book on husbandry. There are limits. I have a 500 pic file in this book, and went through thousands of pictures.
Wow.
Stuff, and you could write this book easily, and gobble up a couple of thousand pages in several volumes. The book alone is about 470 pages.
Okay.
I edited it down, which still is a pretty good sized book.
For sure.
But this is certainly not Andy Holycross, Dr. Holycross, just wonderful books. His Pyromellana book is like 500 pages on Pyromellana alone. So this isn't a triast on the genus. It can't be. And we argued somewhat about the complete word complete. I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but I understand Bob's whole collection of complete series. Sure. And it fell into that. He's my publisher, and it makes a lot of sense too, because people want to collect that series. I didn't want it to denote the complete everything about everything on Pituophis in the book, because it just can't be.
Sure.
It can't be. And some people, like some of the morph people, would want to buy the books strictly to see every morph there is. And there are plenty of morphs in there, but there's not everything. Yeah. And no offense to the ball python book, but I didn't want it to be 700 pages of morphs. So I had to really pay attention, select what I thought was important for everybody. So this book is kind of like a handbook. It's written in a write and write style. The handbooks on snakes at Write and Write, the two books, 1 and 2. By the way, if you don't have those, they need to be in your library. They're iconic. As far as the rattlesnake people, there were Claubers, and I have every set and every edition. In fact, I had Lawrence's signed edition. Wow. Klauber signed rattlesnake books that I donated to IHS auction a few years ago. But you have to kind of stay focused to what you wanted to do. So the Write and Write style, the book basically is a chapter on each species, subspecies. There's 19 in there. Some are no longer recognized. And I bring that and point that out. There's still battles in phylogenetics and the DNA on where you put things. Yeah. That'll be decided at some point in time and will continue to change. So the book will probably be out of date within a year or two, like most books. But I think it'll be very useful because it's got habitat, it's got the basics, very much like Write and Write did. Some good photographs in there, and then there's a section in the back of each species and subspecies. And I have a guest, and it's field notes by, and the word field notes is kind of a liberal thing. I have several PhDs that written a couple of pages on that particular species. I have some herpetoculturists that have written. I've had some friends write something, but there's something at the end of each chapter that I thought was of interest to the reader on that particular species. Some are humorous. I mean, different writing styles, but I like that. And Write and Write did some of that in their books too. I wrote a story about Anna Wright. His wife was down in Big Bend, and they were in the park, and they were on the river there. And she went down in the morning, washed some dishes, and found a Baird's rat snake. And back then, extremely rare. One of the rarest snakes in America. Only a handful of species were known. She found one down there, And she wrote that little story, and that captivated me. And I said, if I ever write a book, I'm going to put a few stories in there because I'm kind of a storyteller anyway. So yeah, it's a little different approach, but I think there's meaningful information in there. There's scale counts, not every scale count in the world, but Olive Stuhl's iconic work in the 40s, scales don't change. So there's, ventral counts, subcaudal counts, things for identification.
Okay.
So I hope it fits the bill, and we will soon find out.
When the book is ready to go, where can people find it? Where can they purchase it?
Okay. ECO Publishing, ECO Publishing. You can just Google that in, and Bob Ashley and Sherry Ashley own ECO Publishing, and they have all their books listed there at a site and how to get those books. I will have some. People want them signed. I'm not. Well, I want books signed by authors, but I don't know. I always feel a little silly, you sign his books, because I'm not the Hillis or Harry Green or one of those guys. But I am going to sign some books. I'll have some here, but most should probably go through ECO when they first come in. We'll have some air shipped over, and then hopefully, later in January, that slow boat from China gets here. With all the books, and then we can get them out there. So.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I think this might be a good time for us to hit that commercial break.
Yeah.
Point of the show. So sit tight, everybody. We'll be back here in just a few minutes.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Green tree pythons, emerald tree boas, and plenty other arboreal snakes have been quite the popularity here at the Trap Talk Reptile Network, which brings me to today's sponsor, the Reptile Perch. Head over to the reptileperch.com and Reptile Perch on Instagram. See what type of design PVC perch is best for your arboreal reptile. But first and foremost, I would also check out David Brom's Green Tree Python availability on the website. And you can also check out his Instagram just to stay current on any projects or any productions that he posts. Thank you so much, David Broms, for your ongoing support. Looking forward to seeing what you have to show in the 2025 season. When you think about building a good community and being a leader of that community, nobody comes to mind better than Mark Hager over at Texas Chondros. That's right. Make sure you head over to TX Chondros on Instagram, and also head over to Mark's website, see what he has available green tree python wise, and be ready for quite the 2025 green tree python breeding season out of Mark Hager. He's a veteran in the green tree python game, one of the best and nicest breeders in the green tree python game. He's been putting on the whole state of Texas for as long as I've known him. So if you want to see all the amazing other chondro keepers out of the state of Texas, another good reason to go follow Mark Hager over at TX Chondros on Instagram. And again, head over to his website, texaschondros.com. You can find all the links in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark Hager, for supporting the Trap. Treat. One of the biggest growths we have in the reptile industry today are the rare species of reptiles that aren't worked with. That's right. That's why I went ahead and partnered up again with Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. Brian works with species such as kahua geckos, gargoyle geckos, all species of tree monitors. He works with Abronia and many other cool species geckos that you can check out all on his website. Head over to sundownreptiles.com, see what he has available. Brian's one of the best doing it in the reptile industry today. He's been on the show multiple times, so make sure you check out all of Brian Susan's episodes on Trap Talk Reptile Network. But more importantly, for the highest quality of captive bred reptiles, make sure you head over to sundownreptiles.com and make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. Thank you again, Brian Susan over at SUNDOWN Reptiles. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor. It's Gary Scavino over at gs.reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
All righty, everybody, we are back. So a question that I thought of to ask you kind of as I was preparing for the episode is one that I haven't asked anybody on here before, but I think you might be the perfect person. As you've seen, the reptile world evolve over the years, but what are a few of the moments, whether it be a new invention within the industry, a new supply of a product or access to animals? What are some of the moments that you think have were like turning points in herpetoculture that were of the most significance over the years?
Wow. There's been so many. I think the fact that herpetoculture started rather simplistically. We basically had native colubrids and things, and we inched into the boa python thing. Some of us went venomous. I did that for 30 years, and I think people's passion and the expansion of what this hobby was, from a couple of rat snakes and corn snakes and a burned Bechtel albino, which was a rare corn snake, to what it is today. I mean, gosh, just in the last 20 years, the last 10 years, the Barkers are very good friends of mine. And of course, they really started so much stuff with boas and pythons. But you look at some of the stuff now, I mean, golly, people hadn't even really seen a Boland's python. And look at the things we're breeding today. And we're figuring out. So I don't know. I don't know if one particular thing stands out. Certainly, Ari Flagel, his book and all his study over there with Boland's was kind of started, I think, a new thing where go live with the snake, find out what the snake wants. Why are we not breeding these things? What's happening here? Pay attention to that. And we've done that now with almost everything. I mean, what's left? A round island boa. I mean, there's very, very few things out there that we haven't been able to tap into. And, and to a good point too. I think, I write in my book, there's some conservation things in there. And I think we've come to a point herpetoculture now provides us the opportunity. It may be expensive, but through captive breeding, that you can acquire almost anything you want today. Yeah. It takes the burden off wild populations. And I think we're at a point in time now where, unless for legitimate research projects and certain things, maybe pairing up a rare snake, that we really don't have to pull from the wild. We can let things remain out there. And you work Lepidus. I was a Lepidus nut for so many years. Yeah. You have more to work with now. We had maculosus, marulus, leps, and clawbrine. That was about it. Mm-hmm. Now it's all over the place, and we have transversus types and all kinds of things and stuff. So very, very interesting. So, it's hard to pinpoint that exact, certain thing, but things started happening fast outside of zoos for sure. I think the fact that we've been able to produce things and hopefully, a good example of a Hamilton's pond turtle, which I think, and I may be wrong, I'm not the turtle expert. I think we're down to like 500 or something in the wild estimated. Okay. And through legitimate breedings with Russ Gurley and I want to say probably Bill Mullen and Wayne Hill, of course, bred thousands of them. And so, we know that under the right conditions, of course, it's all about having land and protected lands, that we can reintroduce species and healthy species to do that. I always talk in these podcasts about Dave Barker's Little White Book. It's a great little pamphlet type book. It's the Ark. What's the name of it?
The Invisible Ark.
Yeah. So it's in fact, he's redoing that book. But
Okay.
It's a template for, I mean, you can take an elephant out of Africa and put it in Alabama, similar kind of conditions there. And if you breed elephants that aren't being shot for their ivory and killed and have a herd, and you can bring that herd up, and then through if a breeder wants to sell to a zoo or something, they certainly can do that and make their money back. And then at some point in time, when conditions are right and lands are bought, that's the big problem, though, is purchasing lands and the money and protecting those lands. You can reintroduce species. With Pituophis, we're doing that with Louisiana pine snakes. Several universities and several zoos participating and doing it successfully.
Yep.
Have released several hundred, if not more, and we're trying to do that maybe with the Kentucky pine snake. With the cover of my book, my favorite Pituophis, and I think the rarest snake in the country, not as a northern pine snake, but that locale for sure. And I went to college in Kentucky. In the 60s and went up there and hunted around Mammoth Cave for 4 years. Never found one even back then. And I studied the pickles at the University of Kentucky, and very, very interesting. I think Phil Peake took them 17 years to find one, and they collect almost daily. He and Bird did some work for the state. So to that point, I'm hoping that something can be done with that population.
Sure.
Sent Phil a few snakes that I'm breeding, and my snakes came from Phil originally. They were gifted. It was a very generous gift. It was the one snake in the world I wanted more than anything. Because I spent so much time up there, couldn't find a damn thing. Big, magnificent snakes. And the problem is getting governments and legislatures together, especially with the snake subject.
Right.
The Burmese
item
shuts down any talk about snakes. And but if they can get on board with that, hopefully then some reintroduction can be done in the right lands. And I'm prepared to, send all my stuff. I've sent some stuff to Phil, and hope at some point in time that'll happen where we can legitimately do that.
Yeah.
So herpetoculture does provide those opportunities, and we know now we're breeding just about everything. I mean, I every time I look at a paper, I go, oh my gosh, who's breeding those? How did that happen? Yeah. How did you even get those? I mean, so it's exciting to be this age and go from newspaper mulch with some water on it to hatch some eggs to where we are today.
No question.
Yeah.
I wanted to pull this picture up here for everybody who's watching, just to reference exactly for anybody who is unaware of Kentucky pine snakes. Man, I mean, what an absolutely outstanding snake that is.
Yeah, they really are. Of course, the yellow in that snake, and there are populations, in Alabama and Tennessee, and some rare populations that have some yellow and stuff, but. That is the cover. That's my big male that is over 7.5 now. Just this huge Nearctic colubrid. It's just a wonderful, wonderful snake, and very unique. So, hopefully we can do something with those. And now they're being bred. They're out there now and being bred, which is a good thing.
Absolutely.
So
I feel like even just a few years ago, probably very few people even were aware of Kentucky pine snakes, and now they're being, obviously nowhere near as readily produced as a lot of the other Pituophis, but to the point where if you're interested, it's not an impossible snake to get your hands on.
No, it's not. It's not. Second, third generations are being bred.
Yeah,
and they're fairly, available, but. I write a little bit of it in the book too about the responsibility of keeping Pituophis. it's a lot of work. If you're a guy with 40 or 50 pits, to do it correctly and to do it right. And I'm pretty critical about people who don't take care of their snakes.
Yeah.
More isn't better. And I discuss some of that in the book. And, there's proper conditions. And these snakes require a lot of space. You can't just put them in a little drawer and forget about them. So they require a lot of space. They eat a lot of food. And as Damon Celsius calls Pitchophis poop or shit, Pinchalophus. He did the cover of my book and stuck that in there. I didn't really see the spelling. It was a joke. But for those of you who have not kept a large bull snake or pine snake, when they defecate, I don't care what kind of seal type safe room you have. You can be across the house and go, oh, the pine snake just took a dump. So there's a lot of work and a lot of care. So people really have to think about, what are their goals, and just to have everything that everybody has as a goal. So I have that or I have that is in my mind not a reason, to keep snakes. So the things you're passionate about, and from the standpoint of the industry and selling a snake, it's always been my belief that what sells your snakes, what you breed, they can be the most common thing in the world, is your passion.
Absolutely.
Why are you breeding rough green snakes? There was a guy several years ago who had a table full of rough green snakes, and I went, wow, this is great. 3 generations. Never saw that before. The little killed green snakes. But he was passionate about them. So, if you stick with the things you are passionate about, passion works, and passion sells your snakes, and
no doubt,
and teaches people a lot of things. But just to have a huge collection, to have everything, is difficult. Some people can do it, and I always tell people on these podcasts, if you quit your day job to get rich overnight, it's a hard go. I never quit my day job. I worked 60-hour weeks and was on call 24/7 for patients and things, and still managed to keep a sizable collection. There are some people that are successful in doing it, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to do it right. And that it starts from the bottom up, of keeping clean cages and taking care of your animals. These animals are no different in my mind than dogs and horses and cats and birds, and they require care. If we take them out of their natural environment, you better do your damn best to take care of them. So that's my view on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even more than well, not even more, but another aspect of anybody who wants to be a professional or full time, however you want to put it, the extreme amount of, I guess, financial stubbornness you need to have.
Well, it is.
It comes in waves, especially.
It's very difficult. It's a very difficult go because requirements of feeding alone. I mean, I've always bred my own mice and rats. I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have a shed full of mice and rats. It's part of my life. And I'm kind of out of tune. Somebody tells me what they pay for a shipment of mice, and I scratch my head and I go, wow, you have to be kidding me. So, and so, when somebody pays now $100 for a corn snake, people go, wow. And we go, well, they've had the corn snake for a year and they put a lot of food in it and a lot of time. So, so it takes a special kind of person to do that, and it's not easy. And as you know, you better sleep a few hours and put a lot of time into what you do, and get creative in coming up with perhaps a podcast and a question and a few shows, and try to do it all. And some people do, and some people are successful. But those people that I know that have been are people that have worked very, very hard at this. And it is not something easy. It's not putting 2,000 snakes together in a bunch of slide racks and getting rich overnight, because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And especially these days, I feel like back in call it 20 years ago, when a lot of the large production facilities were kind of in their heyday, there was a big wholesale demand for snakes with not a whole lot of supply to go along with it. So if you had, 1,000 corn snakes, that is not the sell it is today.
Those years were few.
Yeah.
It caught up with everybody very quickly. And, we're a big industry with a lot of people producing things. So
yes,
people now know that they can take time and buy from somebody who produces good animals, have a good reputation, they're honest. And for the most part, most of the people in the industry are. There's a few that we all know that we could do without.
Sure.
But you have that in anything.
Absolutely.
So hats off to those of you who have made it a full-time adventure. My time in the snake room when I was working 60-hour weeks was from 11 at night till about 2 in the morning, and back up at 6 and back out there. So, and that's kind of how it was done back then. Yeah, we never even thought about selling snakes. I mean,
Sure.
we were just breeding snakes and trading them. It was just trading. I was going back and forth West Coast trading stuff. And then somebody talked about this first show, and I go, "How does that even work? What do you just take a bunch of snakes in a little shoebox?" And basically that's what people were doing. You'd open the top and there'd be 6 alternate crawling all over the place. Which one do you want? Oh, let's take another look. And there weren't even deli cups. It was just crazy. And so we've come a long way. I think there's room for it. There's always going to be the debate, and I talk about this in the book, about selling animals and reproducing animals. But I will tell you that pets, and to elongate that term pets and keeping reptiles, however you want to call them, it's an important part of history and an important part of the humankind. We surround ourselves with animals, and I've got a lab and a Boston Terrier, and people love animals. That's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. And there's a lot to say about a good dog versus a lot of so-called friends that we have. So I'm blessed to have a lot of really good friends that I have been very good to me, very generous to me. Certainly, helped with the book, and I'm very proud to call them friends. And then I have what I call some pseudo friends that, always out there to see what they can get, and that's okay. That's okay. As long as you're honest and you try to do the right thing. And like I said, the thing about human kindness, we could use a lot more of that, not only in the industry, but in life itself, I think so. Yes,
absolutely. And, the whole movement towards social media, with everything being, online and accessible to everybody has a voice. Oftentimes there's a lot of complaints about social media, and rightfully so, but the way that I see it, you can really kind of curate what you see and what you interact with. And, you can derive a lot of positivity from the right type of people interacting on social media, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I find it interesting, and of course some of it's obnoxious, but
yeah, of course,
you're going to have that in real life as well, outside of social media. And yeah, it's been a good ride riding down a trail. Not ready to sing Happy Trails yet with Dale Evans, but I'm still in the saddle and hope for a few more years. And I've just met so many really interesting young people like yourself that are doing really good things, just so ahead of the game at your age from where we were at your age. It's almost laughable, but we paved the way in some ways.
Absolutely. I mean, we have the great privilege to kind of have already been elevated so much further by all the groundwork that was laid for us. And, and then trying to do the same as well. I think that, and this may be just me not being exposed to it, but I do almost feel like there are fewer people, young kids these days, really taking herpetoculture seriously, kind of maybe compared to some of the younger or some of the generations past. And this might also just be me not having the right perspective on it, at least from just what I experience in my life. But I think with the introduction of social media, there's a lot more of a, what can I do to get more views or likes on my posts, as opposed to, what do I need to do to really fully understand my animals, or, more deeply,
well, that's
figuring out
well
the breeding and whatnot.
Yeah, well spoken. That's a very good point, and I agree with that. It's kind of a different world. I don't really need the social media. I participate in what you guys call the old guys Facebook. I'm stuck on there with a lot of old people, and enjoy it. But I don't hang out there. I would rather be looking through glass at a snake and seeing what it's doing, and still have great joy in keeping a collection, and hope I can do it for a few more years.
Absolutely. I want to pivot a little bit to some of your venomous work that you've done. Crotalus are some of the snakes that I'm the most passionate about. I moved out to the desert to be able to be close to them. You've obviously had an extensive rattlesnake collection, venomous in general, but I guess kind of maybe give us an overview of the venomous that you've kind of been around over the years, and then maybe more specifically the rattlesnakes.
Well, I've kept a lot of different species of snakes, and a lot of different venomous snakes. And I would say right now, there are certain venomous snakes that I truly believe that no one should be keeping, outside a special facility or institution or something. That seems to be a term today, facility. People say, Craig, I want to see your facility. I go, well, my facility's down to, a bedroom and a closet and things scattered around the house. So you'd be extremely disappointed. I think I do make my own cages, and I think
they're beautiful
and stuff. But I've had king cobras. It's not a good thing in a neighborhood to pull out your 12-foot king in the backyard. And look, venomous keepers. If I'm a neighbor and somebody has a venomous collection, I'm concerned if I have kids, and especially if I'm not a snake person.
Sure.
And I think that's a legitimate concern people would have. What happens if something gets loose? And now, you see all this stuff, people with the oxyuranus and, tape hands and all these different things. And there's this part of people who want to be at the head of the pack with the most venomous and the largest venomous and this sort of thing. And it's really kind of nonsense. And some of that behavior certainly has hurt venomous keepers. It's getting harder every day to keep a collection. And I understand that. I truly do. If you get bit, we talked about this a little bit before, it's always your fault. You've broken the rules. Yes. It's never a venomous snake's fault. And I've been bitten several times, did it for a long time, but even one or two bites, and one was very serious. So, it's not for everybody. And there are certainly concerns in keeping those. But, people that keep Jamesons and black mamas are crazy. Inland tape hands up there with them. Forest cobras are another one. Kings are fascinating. Kings are one of the most. If we use the word intelligence, it's just fascinating. When I had venomous snakes, you walk in a room and, snakes will follow with their head. They'll follow movement. Sometimes they know it's time you're feeding and people are moving and stuff. But king cobras, those things with a few other species put their eye right up on that glass and they make eye contact with you. They watch you. It's bone chilling and fascinating at the same time.
Yeah.
I found Bushmasters to be extremely interesting, along with Kings. And, of course, the crotolid thing, the thing about keeping crotolids is, they're coilers. They come out and eat, they bask, relatively easy to keep if you have a safe way to keep them.
Yeah.
I always kept everything in locked cages. And even though we were in a locked room, it forced me to think when I opened the cage, how do you do this? And, I kept a lot of different genus, a lot of different venomous snakes, but really settled into crotolids. I went through the Montaigne stuff pretty heavily. Gosh, there's not a rattlesnake out there I don't love. I love Western Diamondbacks. People don't want to keep them because they're all over the place, but they're as variable as anything else. I've seen some of the coolest Westerns, that you could ever see. And there is no junk snake. If I'm out on the road, I stop for everything. I appreciate everything. Golly, went through all the Dorissus and Terrificus, all those kind of things. I can't, it's hard to beat a good willard eye. The dominant form of the white flash markings on the face, it kind of goes downhill from there. Everybody wants Obscurus and Silas and all these things, but what a very cool snake, a very neat snake. So,
I have to say that willard eye complex are my favorite venomous snakes.
And look, it's a snake with this rattle on the tail. What's that all about? It's we're still debating what this thing's all about. Catalonensis, the rattlerless rattlesnake. They had a number of those. I think the theory was that they lost their rattle because they became bird eaters.
Okay.
And the rattle. I'm not sure I buy that. And here again, I'm not an academic, but I think it's a genetic flaw that was inbred on the island where the matrix, the groove is not deep enough to retain the rattle when it sheds.
Interesting.
So when you have inbreeding in a small population, it's isolated like on an island, and you have a defect, and sometimes those things can be inbred where it's not a good thing. So
sure.
Those are fascinating debates. Those are the kind of things that are really interesting. Bushmasters with this really reversed rough tail. Well, is that the beginning of a rattle or is that the end of a rattle in that genus? Crotolids are just fascinating. And, very few animals have evolved that some small animal can eliminate, in some cases, something the size of a horse, with venom. It's a very interesting, thing, this venomous snake thing. And the study of venoms alone is very interesting as well.
No question. I guess I'll tell a little story of my own to lead into a question. When I was younger, I was, as many of us are, just infatuated with venomous snakes. And I always had it kind of in my mind that I would end up working with them. At my first job I had back outside of Chicago, there was an incredible venomous collection, king cobras, bushmasters, mambas, Mangshan vipers, bunch of rattlesnakes, etc. So this is like very much, it's a non-negotiable in my brain at this point. And I ended up at a kind of little educational reptile show event that we threw through my work. Some people from the St. Louis Herpetological Society came up, set up a display, and had some venomous on, in their displays, just to educate. And I was talking with one of the gentlemen at the table. I wish I remembered his name, older gentleman. And I was, probably 15, just excited, talking about, wanting to work with venomous snakes. And he just stops and sternly just like, why would you do that? And I'm almost kind of floored because I'm not even sure if I even considered that thought. And I just was like, well, I'm very fascinated by them. And, there's something about them that just is different than non-venomous. He's like, if you don't have a good reason to do it, don't do it. you should not do
Well,
it?
I will tell you this. Being envenomated, being bit is not a badge of courage. A lot of people, I've been bit several times over a long career, but that's not something to be proud of. It's a badge that idiots wear because it's always your fault. It's never the snake's fault. You've broken the rules. And you get sloppy, and if you do it 30, 40 years, sometimes you're in a hurry and things happen. So I will tell you this from the standpoint of being a registered nurse and working with a lot of snake bites, and being bitten myself. Number one, it doesn't feel too good if you're in intensive care unit.
Could imagine so.
And number two, it's very expensive. And number three, it causes a lot of problems in your quote facility, your house, your neighborhood, the news, it just really isn't for everybody, and people need to really think through it very carefully. It can be a very, very, very dangerous thing. So, anyway.
Yeah. So, that to me was an interesting moment because it caused some reflection of, why do I want to do this? What is the upside to putting my life on the line for snakes? So I guess, to anybody who's, I guess particularly young people who are interested in working with venomous snakes, what would be your wisdom to bestow onto them about, why to do it, whether to do it or why not to do it, kind of the thought process behind, engaging in venomous snakes?
I mean, I'm not going to tell some young kid. I mean, look, I kept them fascinated. Yeah. I still am. I've chosen not to keep a venomous collection because of my age, and I have grandchildren that come in and out. Even though I had a locked room and locked cages, it's a thing. I had my time, but that's my preference. I love those. So I'm not going to be an idiot, tell some, just don't do that. But I do think there's ways. Florida requires 1,000 hours of work before you can get your permit now, and I think that weeds out a lot of people that overnight want to keep a couple of big bad rattlesnakes or something. Sure. I think that's fair to do that. I don't want to see that right taken away from people. To do that. So, but at every turn, you'll see some idiot on social media doing something and free handling, and that doesn't help any of you guys. Trust me, the laws are coming left and right, and that's by the way why USARC is really important and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Years ago, I proposed that all collectors chip in $1,000 a year, and we go to Washington, and we go to a lobbyist firm, and you walk in and you say, well, we want to be represented, and they'll say, what's the subject? And you say snakes, and they don't even blink an eye. They're so professional, and instead of one lawyer in Florida defending a case, you have 10 three-piece suit lawyers get off a jet, and the Fish and Game Department says, well, we can't afford to do this every week like this. We have a budget too, and you really good representation. It's not that USARC doesn't. It's not. USARC does a really good job at what they do, and I'm a big supporter of them. The fact is that our industry, all of us, and venomous people are pretty cheap. I'm an old curmudgeon here, telling you that for a look, the Bass Association, they dump tons of money and save their industry. I'm not going to debate the whole gun thing. I have my own feelings and everything, and you may not like the gun lobby and how they're represented, but oh my gosh, you can't touch those guys. You can't touch gun laws because it's very effective. And so to that point, and it's because there's so much money that goes into
Yeah.
Into the guys. And if we were willing to do that, I mean, people go, wow, it's $1,000. I go, so, well, how much money do you make a year? You make $20,000 selling corn snakes or something. Yeah. It seems reasonable to do that, to get the right representation. And then you would see USARC really, have the teeth that they need. They're doing the best job they can do, but we're kind of a cheap industry, and
sure
we need to rethink that. And not only to that point, we could be a little bit more generous with our time and some of our animals, with some of these younger kids and people who can't afford things. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is that cheapness within the industry leads to us being an easy target for animal rights groups. You don't see them going after, aquaculture the way that you do.
We have to have our battles. I mean, the NRA, you can't, if you breathe anything, you got the jet flying in with the whole crew. And look, it's all about law, but you have 5 guys arguing law, versus 1. It's a better result. And so we should rethink that as a group, and be a little bit more organized, and be willing to do that. When USARC has these auctions, it's important to do something. You can donate a pair of corn snakes, and you go to any show, and I will guarantee you half the people in there don't donate anything.
Sure.
But they'll complain about the laws, and it's not going to get any easier. It's only going to get tougher, and especially for you venomous keepers, it's going to get tough, and so I think you guys should get organized. I mean, strongly organized.
Yeah.
And the only way to do it takes money, and it takes legal representation, and it's all based on law and rights and things. So, for those people that don't want to put up a little money every year to do something, I mean, nobody really gets a free hobby. It's like I said, bass fishermen, all these people have organizations that are, and they're well represented. So,
absolutely. Yeah. This actually leads very well into a question that I was going to ask you. There's a lot of debate about what I'm about to say, and my thoughts have changed over time. But as I feel like recently, on a national level, we haven't been hit by any sort of major sweeping proposed legislation. We can, I guess the reasoning behind that we could probably leave for another time, but there's always the kind of debate between, do we work with the government, state or federal, to make reasonable legislation or a somewhat of a permitting system or parameters for keeping, somewhere where we meet in the middle, or fight tooth and nail to not give an inch because we give an inch and they'll take a mile. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it would be better for the industry?
The NRA, you take an inch and they take a mile, that sort of thing, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a difficult subject. The problem is, Stephen, is that you're talking about the subject is snakes. And it's not a popular subject except for those guys. And Dave Barker testified in front of Congress, gave the true explanation to the Burmese python debacle and what really happened, everything else. And all they saw, he'll tell you, is a guy with long hair, and a long white beard in a suit, giving true facts and talking about the industry, and looking around, people just aren't interested. It's a subject about snakes. And, we have a Congress that can't even, on both sides, get together and solve problems. So, you bring in the snake thing, and, Alice or Bill says, what's this Bill 222B? Oh, it's, people should be able to keep snakes in their home. And I'll have to tell you, most people who are not into snakes would say, well, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Why would people do that? So it's easy not to vote for something like that. And that's where education and stuff comes through. I mean, on the other side of the coin, a mainstay pet today a snake is considered one of those main pets, a ball python or something.
Absolutely.
So you have to plug economics into it too. If you're going to go to Congress stuff, how does this affect people's lives and how much money is being made in the industry, that sort of thing.
How much tax revenue is it generating for them?
Well, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. And so I think we could be a little better organized as an industry and work hard for some of those goals. And look, I'm always for working with somebody and for things that make common sense, look, some cities have Python rules now and stuff. And, I mean, I kind of get it. You got a 22-foot retic. Bob Clark's a friend, and he certainly has a right to keep those and should keep those. I've kept those. Yeah. But it takes homework and a lot of work to understand the whole subject. And the subject of snakes is a difficult subject and always will be, because most people just don't like them, whether it be misunderstandings or biblical or whatever it might be. So it's a difficult subject. It's a back burner subject,
no question. I think one of the positives that we could be seeing, it might not even manifest now, but as we go forward, a lot of the kids these days that are growing up, when I was in school, not all that long ago, all things considered, being the kid with a few ball pythons or whatever kind of made me a little bit of an outcast. But now today, if you say ball python to somebody 20 years ago, 15 years ago, they may have had no idea what you were talking about, like you snake. And now the answer is, oh, my cousin has a ball python.
Of course.
Oh, we had one in the classroom at school.
Sure.
And it's just becoming it's so much more common than it was. I think that could really be working in our favor. Maybe, not necessarily proportionally more people are keeping snakes, which they are, but in general, the population knows that snakes are pets. And
we've come now. Sure, we've come a long way. I write about some of this in the Pitch-Ovis book and the second part of the book and husbandry and stuff. And we've certainly, come a long way. The subject is still the Ophidian dilemma, the human and the snake. It's just it's an ongoing thing, and still to this day, even though people understand a little bit more because of herpetoculture, you walk down a block and ask, 9 out of 10 people just, they're kind of neutral. I don't want to keep a snake. So that will always kind of be the case, the subject. Sure. But here again, if you ride a horse or you keep a Labrador or you have a bird, I should be able to keep my snake, and I believe in that. And then it opens up the subject for a conversation of, how well do you keep your snakes, and how well do you take care of your Labrador, and how well do you take care of your horse? And, that's a whole nother thing with animal rights people, and that, they have their points, but and the only way to keep the doors open is really through organization and people willing to work hard and give generously. A lot of people just ride in the coattails of others in this industry and just feel like it's their right to have a free hobby, but it doesn't work that way.
No, it definitely does not.
Yeah. And the thing is, if laws come to the point, I talk to fish and game people a lot. I have a lot of friends involved. My son is chief in law enforcement, and not in fish and game and stuff. But we have these conversations all the time. Permitting programs like in Florida are good. The thing is, if you treat people poorly, the whole nail gun debacle with pythons and everything in Florida and stuff. What a nightmare, for that agency. But if you treat people poorly like that, people are going to stop getting your permits, and then you don't know where all these people are. With a permit system, you have a map of everybody that keeps a snake.
Yeah,
and whether that's fair or not, I don't know, but you need to be very careful. I tell these people, you treat people poorly, and the people that do things right and have an attitude, and pretty soon people aren't permitting. Now you got a problem. Now you need a warrant to go in and just look around, and it doesn't work in your favor.
Sure.
So, so I'm kind of for working with law enforcement and creating the right kind of laws. And we did that, Gene Bissett and I a little bit, and a few other people. We did some cage requirements years ago and stuff, things that should be done. And I think there's room for that. And most people in Fish and Game are good people. They're just doing their job. There's always a few in everything that can be difficult, but a lot of those attitudes, though, we've caused some of those attitudes, but by our attitudes with those people, by treating them poorly, so let's take a deep breath and try to get along and be constructive and get things done on both sides. What works for you guys and what works for us, so we don't have, the right to keep a collection, that right taken away from us, which is wrong. So.
Yeah. What I feel like is almost one of the scariest precedents that are set by some of these agencies, and particularly in Florida, are kind of never knowing when these regulations are going to change on you. And I think a lot of people who are potentially in shoes like mine of being younger, wanting a career or even just a life, maybe not even necessarily a career within herpetoculture, you see Florida as the reptile center of the entire world. It's where it's where it all started. That's where all the animals are, where all the people are. But then you see people who have amassed collections of, let's say, some of the larger pythons, legislation being implemented against them without a grandfather clause, and kind of almost no recourse or no way to push back. That's kind of terrifying for somebody who might, who keeps reptiles and like, hey, I have a collection full of Asian rat snakes and I want to live in Florida. Well, what if in 10 years they ban whatever I'm keeping, and now I have to potentially uproot my life and move if I want to keep these animals I've been working with?
Stephen, you just said the problem. You just said, we have no recourse, and we should have recourse. We should have a powerful lobby.
Yeah.
I don't say it lightly when I say, Lobby Row is in Washington, D.C. And you walk into a lobbyist firm with 150 lawyers, and they're going to represent you. They don't even know what the subject is. And you walk in and say snakes, and they don't smile. They just go, okay. And they go out and hire Dave Barker, and they hire people that know something about snakes. They study snake law, and it's all about law and laws and rights and what you can and can't do. And trust me, you have 5 hotshot lawyers in 3-piece suits that walk in and sit down, and they're going to argue this. Fish and game farms say, we can't do this we don't have the budget for that. And it's the NRA. They're extremely strong because they have a lot of money, and people don't want their rights taken away from them, whether you agree with that or not. And but you have to respect the fact that they are very, very strong, and one of the strongest lobbies, I think, in the world. And we don't have those numbers, but we could sure be a lot better than where we are now if people gave to USARC, and and we could make it stronger, and we would have recourse, and would be respected. So yeah, you've got an uphill battle, Stephen, you guys, but I'm not too worried about it at 77. I will have a corn snake in a box till the day I die, and you'll have to, as the famous actor said, "Pry it out of my cold, dead hands." Only it was not a snake. So, yeah, it's hard to explain your passion, but
Sure.
the way to do that is to say to some. I ask fish and game guys. I say, "So, what's your passion? What do you really love?" "Well, I like to bass fish." I say, "Okay. What if somebody came up with some nonsensical reason that you can no longer fish for bass 6 months out of the year without proving any problems with the bass population?" You'd say that's ridiculous. Well, here you go. What's your passion? I make sweaters with yarn. Well, we're going to ban a certain kind of yarn for some silly reason. It's you really have to get to the root of having people understand your passion for snakes. What is their passion?
Yeah.
And it's really not any different. We live a long life, but we live a short life, and we should be able to responsibly, love and take care of those things we think so much of. And, and I mean, you can debate keeping animals all day long, and there's good points and bad points, but I'm still of the belief if you do it right and you take care of your animals, you should be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, at this point, with the state of the world and the development of as much land as people can develop, I'm of the opinion that the only way that we have to save anything at this point is through making people aware that these animals even exist. And unfortunately, the best way to do that is showing them the animals face to face. There's only so much that a nature documentary or something can do to really inspire somebody, but there's a difference when you actually put a hand physically on whatever that animal is and feel a real connection to it, where now you actually care about it. It's not just some theoretical idea that you heard about on a TV show or on the radio or something like that. It's like, it's tangible and there's emotion to it at that point.
You're spot on. If you understand that, you'll come a long way. And I actually write about that in the book as well. I use, for an example, if a child has never seen an elephant and he sees it on his phone or his iPad or something, and he learns all about it, and he's fascinated with it, it doesn't come even close to going to a zoo and having the trunk of an animal and that little finger grab a peanut out of his hand and eat it and look into that big animal's eyes. Yeah. That hands-on, that visual cannot be replaced. So that's a whole nother subject. Are zoos, do we need zoos? Yeah, I think we do need zoos. If you do them right, yeah, maybe we sacrifice some things, but the educational aspect, saving something like an elephant. And I use in my book the example of orcas. When I grew up, we knew killer whales. We didn't know them as orcas. They were killer whales. And elementary school, we'd have conversations. What's the toughest animal in the world? The meanest animal in the world? As kids do. You said, "Oh, it's a killer whale," And then all of a sudden, you get the SeaWorld comes along, controversial and should have been in some ways. But I will say this, they came along, and the next generation, they know what an orca is. They're buying because they bought stuffed animals and T-shirts. They learned to love orcas. And out of that, the Marine Mammal Act gained momentum, and very much because of places like SeaWorld.
Yeah.
Now, how you take care of animals and is a whole nother debate.
Sure.
And is it fair to sacrifice one or two orcas in a decent environment? It can't be the ocean, to educate so many people to save a species. I would say yes. So just like zoos done properly, really teach so much. And and we can do the same thing with our own collections. If people would take the time to volunteer and do it in the right way, please. And don't go handing your snakes out and have every kid get bitten, and but if we would do a little bit more of that in the community-based stuff, it would go a long way, I think.
Yeah. One thing that we kind of talked about earlier on the phone was, I grew up in Chicago around the Chicago Herpetological Society. And one thing that they used to do was an event called Reptile Fest. And I've talked about it a few times on here, but for anyone who's listening, picture a reptile show, a good sized reptile show. I was at the UIC basketball auditorium. So it was a big venue and no sales at all. And every animal gets handed over the table to a kid. I mean, that event every year created thousands upon thousands of reptile lovers within the Chicagoland area, whether or not they went on to keep snakes as pets or iguanas or whatever it may be. That's aside, but
all about education.
We didn't leave that building without having a deep appreciation for those animals. It was impossible. And for the people, everyone there, they have no incentive. They're not monetarily incentivized to come to this event. They're taking their weekend to talk to people, talk to kids, and be around their friends. And
we need more of that in a constructive way, in an organized way too. But it goes a long way. And you find half those people that are there that are so fascinated are the parents. It's not even just the kids. The parents are just fascinated.
Yeah.
When you start talking about color and chromatophores and things in reptiles and scales and all of this sort of thing, a lot of people are fascinated with that. So
yeah,
we need to do. We don't do a good enough job doing that. And everybody should participate that in the right way, in a constructive way. And here again, our industry needs to quit being so cheap. And hey, it's tough when you buy a box of mice for $1,000. I know it's tough, but cough up some money for USARC and help them out. It's all we have, and we need to make it stronger. And it's not going to get stronger unless people are willing to bleed a little bit and help our industry out. So if not, we're going to lose a lot.
Absolutely. And I think that lends in pretty well to one of the topics I want to ask you about to wrap up here as we're approaching that 2-hour mark. I asked this question.
Pretty good wrap up for a 77-year-old. That's pretty good.
Absolutely.
My wife has been keeping our dogs quiet in the other room, so
most appreciated.
Yeah. I have to face the dogs and her when I hear about it. No,
so
Linda's great. There's no way I could have done what I've done without my wife. Listen, she's been behind me all the way, and I humorously, but honestly, talk about some of that in the book as well, in keeping the collection. So I hope that benefits some people. But back to your question, I'm sorry.
No, for sure. So I ask the question all the time, people on here of, where do you see the hobby going? Where do you see the industry going in the future? But I kind of want to just change that up a little bit. I want to ask you where you would like to see the hobby go in the future. Look 10, 20 years down the line. It's going to change how it will, but what would your idyllic view of that be?
I think for me, I'd like to see the hobby clean itself up some. I would like to see us have some standards as a group of how we take care of our animals. It shouldn't just be, I've got company coming over and run around clean all your cages, and I'm serious about this. More isn't better. You need to be able to take care of those animals, and there's no reason to have a dirty cage. No reason to have a dirty cage, and no reason to have snakes that have dirty, empty water bowls, and there's too much of that. And so I would like to see the industry really push those standards. And when new people get started, they know that it comes with a responsibility. There's always going to be those people that, it's like dogs and cats and horses. There's always those people who shouldn't have animals, or shouldn't have guns, or shouldn't have this or that. You can debate that all day long, but there should be a real emphasis and push on that. That if you go over to a friend's house and you go, "Hey, Bill, man, you need to clean these cages. This isn't right." and we don't do enough of that. So I'd like to see the industry clean itself up a little bit, take better care of these animals, not just looking at them as like puppy mills do, just breeding farms and packed in slide racks and looked at once a week. I'm not a big fan of that. So, and by the way, I do have some slide racks, but I look at my animals every day, every one of them, every day. So, yeah,
absolutely. And one last thing I wanted to ask about before we get out of here, and we talked about it a bit before the show. I said I probably wouldn't ask you about it, but I just have to. I feel like you're well known for certain animals that you worked with, but like you said, you've probably been around more reptile species than most people. And I want to ask you about your scrub python experience a little bit. So in your herpetocultural career, what kind of scrub pythons have you kept?
Well, not an extensive thing. Little barnecks and
anything at all is enough for me. To be able to stamp your name on scrub python history is worth it for me. So,
well, Moluccans and barnecks and some of the first things, and they really came out of the Barkers. The Barkers were producing things and had things before anybody did. There was the Dick Gergens and Dave and Tracy Barker and there were a handful of people, that had these things. They were just unheard of. I think an experience that stands out is I was at Eugene Bissette's, and years ago and they may have been Tracy snakes back then.
Okay.
I think Gene and Tracy dated for a while, actually. So they may have been Tracy snakes, but I walked in there because he had gaboons and rhinos and things, and we'd stop and talk. And but I walked in and I turned to my left, and he had one out of the cages on a big branch. I don't know what they are now, but kinghorn eye, the big ones. And oh my gosh, it just was very, very impressive. It's not like a big heavy retic or big Burmese or something, but these things are a big, long. They stretch out forever, and muscular, and they're big, big snakes and big curved teeth, and not necessarily great attitudes. That's to me a very scary snake. No, that whole group is fascinating and for years underappreciated. Yeah. And we could talk for hours, but we got to wrap it up. But about how many species and how many things are underappreciated. We just get into this rut that we want the same thing, but there's so many things out there that we haven't even scratched the surface of. And it's good to see amethystines, these things gain some interest. Nobody wanted those things before. Yeah. There's these ugly little things, and some of them are not ugly. My Moluccans were just gold, not yellow, but gold, yellow. So, I found it fascinating, but I'm certainly not an authority on them, but I had them early on before people had them. And
I love it. I love to be able to, have you as part of scrub python history. So that alone to me is
well, I should call my old friend Tracy up and see if she can get on your show and talk about Tracy eye.
That might need some convincing from you. I think Tracy has probably said no to more podcasts than anybody in the reptile industry.
She does. She doesn't really feel a need to get out there. Want to get out there, does her own thing. And Dave's finally, they're bringing the Blood Python book to fruition, and they have their own lives, but they were at the very forefront of boas and pythons, and along with a few other people. So very dear friends, and really care about them. But that's a hard go to try to get them on.
That would be a dream. But
they're more secure than I am. So I guess I need the social interaction of you younger people. So
oh man, that's funny. Well, Craig, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. This was truly an honor. I really, really appreciate this. It was, I mean, one of, if not my favorite episode I have done on my show here. So I am eternally grateful.
Well, certainly my pleasure. And for all of you out there on the planet Snake Tune, happy holidays.
Yes.
Take care of those snakes and take care of those families too.
Absolutely. So, again, the book should be out, you said sometime in early January.
Yeah. It keeps getting bumped a little bit, but I should get a printing date here in any day or two. And from there, it's just a matter of stacking them on the big boat from China. And hopefully the tariff doesn't change overnight and the boat sits, because you either accept it or you don't. And like I said, books are expensive enough. But I think the beginning part of January, and then I'll be out there, I think, with the book, doing some book signings and with Bob at like Tinley and some of the major shows and stuff.
Okay.
And hopefully it serves a purpose. I hope you guys like it. If not, it's okay. I'm old. I don't have to listen to it too long.
Well, I will definitely be getting myself a copy as soon as I can. I know many people listening are as well. Would the best way to keep up with information on that be through your Facebook page?
I post things from time to time. As soon as I get the print date, I'll post that. But I think we're pretty solid about the beginning part of January when they start coming in. And Bob will start posting stuff on his page on Eco and on the page and showing it here. We're just waiting for that actual print date. So what they do is they call you up and they go, on 12/27 at 2:33 p.m., your book's going to start the run. It's an exciting time. So, and here again, hardback and then a limited edition, leather bound with kind of a slipcase and stuff. So it's a very nice, generous package that Bob's doing. So he gets all the kudos on this thing. So.
Absolutely. Well, Craig, once again, thank you so much. This was an absolutely amazing show. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Okay, Stephen, take care of those Kentucky pines.
Yes, absolutely. I will. Well, thank you, everybody, once again for tuning into the show tonight. And I will catch you all back here next week for a new episode.